Hello, creepy housekeepers and fast-talking reporters and all the ships at sea, and welcome to A Very Good Year, the movie podcast where we invite a guest to pick their favorite year of movies and talk to us about that year. I'm your host, Jason Bailey, and across the mic and across the country from me is my co-host,
Michael Hull.
And our guest today is a podcaster, film writer, and editor who specializes in horror and exploitation cinema, with bylines at Fangoria, Bloody Disgusting, Dread Central, and more. Please welcome our friend and yours, Stephanie Crawford. Hi, Stephanie.
Hi. Wow, I didn't know I had so many friends. This is exciting.
It is. We're so happy to have you here. Let's get right to it. What year did you choose to talk to us about, and why?
I chose the year 1940. And after that introduction, I feel kind of bad that horror absolutely did not lead me to that year. My other film love happens to be screwball comedies. And 1940 was a very important, very fertile year for those. So if I'm completely honest, that's what pulled me in.
Got it. No. We've had guests say that before. It's like, I knew... when Larry Karaszewski was on a few weeks ago, he said, all I talk about is the 70s, and I know people would expect me to pick a year from the 70s, so I picked 1961. It's great. Use the opportunity to show the other colors. We love that. Anytime we have a guest who is significantly younger than the year they chose, we always want to know, their old movie origin story. Like, how did you become a cinephile, but particularly, when did you get into movies of this particular era?
Well, I think it started with television. Actually, I really liked watching Nick at Night as a kid. And that got me into I Love Lucy and Dick Van Dyke and all. So I was never averse to black and white. I never had to get over that. To me, I'm not even sure if I understood the concept of reruns. I just thought, shows look different. That's interesting.
Right.
But I think when I started getting more passionate about them was my late teens. I actually started becoming mysteriously ill, and I had a lot of downtime. And I just threw myself into film. It's something that can really distract you and transport you when you're trapped in bed. And, I think I was, I think what happened was I signed up for the Columbia DVD club. I was like, I what? I'm going to watch all those classics that I know is a moral imperative for me to finally see. So I got Gone with the Wind, Singing in the Rain, and I was just shocked by how much, not like, oh, wow, they were pretty cute back then, weren't they? It's like, oh, holy shit, this is what people are talking about with cinema. And Singing in the Rain especially. It's still one of my favorite films, but musicals brought me more towards seeing comedies. I'm a comedy nerd, so of course I wanted to see the earlier films. And once I discovered the fast-talking screwball comedies, there's no going back for me. They just spoke to me.
Yeah, I was going to say, what is it about the screwball comedy in particular, about that specific era, that specific version of comedy that speaks so clearly to you that you love so much?
I think I'm a big dialogue person, and I'm a big character person. I can take a pretty plain plot on the plate if you have but it's just the writing. I wish I could write that way so much. I have a pathetic obsession with trying to get people to laugh. I've had that my entire life. And they just really figured it out back then. It's just grace. It's fun. It's smart. There's always heart in there. There's goofiness. There's questionable things, of course. But I don't know. There's just something so magical and fun and kinetic about them. And they don't seem to age to me. I mean, the social mores, of course, but
I gotta say, I'm glad that you made it out of that sickly period intact. And frankly, I think it's kind of amazing that you have the same cinephile origin story as Martin Scorsese. Like, that is pretty, not a lot of people could say, well, Marty and I have that in common. Well, we have a splendiferous top 5 from you to talk through, and we're anxious to get through it with you. Before we do, Mike is going to walk us through some of what was going on in the world in the very eventful year of 1940. Here's headlines.
I don't know what you mean. Nothing was going on in 1940. Very slow year.
Oh, that was fast.
Yep, done.
It was a terrible year by almost any metric because fascism was still in its white-hot magnesium phase before it burned itself out, because it's not a sustainable way to fucking run anything, and eventually everybody hates them, and then other people make guns.
Yep.
So I just don't want to fucking talk about any of that shit. I don't think this is what people come here for, and sure. I don't mean it because we shouldn't know about it or think about it or talk about it. I mean it because I am liable and most likely to go into a deep hole of, well, did you know about when fucking blah blah said this and that, and I'm just gonna stop myself from doing that. We're gonna talk about literally anything else. Okay,
great.
January 19, the Three Stooges release You Nasty Spy, the first official Hollywood anti-Nazi movie.
Well,
and I know that is going against the thing I just said, but I think it's important to point out that, like, Hollywood was on board early, and so were the fucking Stooges. Let's go, everybody against these
Give
punks.
it up for the fucking Stooges. I did not know that,
saying.
And God bless them for it. Right side of history, boys.
You know what I mean? Okay.
Yeah.
In February, 4-year-old Tenzin Gyatso was proclaimed the 13th Dalai Lama and immediately became ruler of the country in what some may deem a suspect organizing principle. I don't really know how it worked. Anyway, shout out to Tenzin. Yep.
And there's a fine Martin Scorsese movie about that you can go watch. It's called Kundun, and it's highly recommended. There you go.
Thanks to the moxie and pure stupidity of children, they're stupid. I mean, I love them, but they're stupid.
Do too.
They're can't help it.
Yeah.
They're young. They still have growing to do. And because they're still stupid and do stupid things, 12-year-old Marcel Rabidat of the Montagnac region of France crawled into a tiny hole in the side of a mountain and found the Lascaux Cave, home of a ton of beautiful 30,000-year-old cave paintings. So actually that one worked out. He didn't die.
Good for him.
Yeah, turned out that was good. The paintings are wonderful, and there is an excellent documentary called Cave of Forgotten Dreams by friend of the show Werner Herzog about this cave and these paintings. I don't know how many people could do that movie and do it as right as he fucking did it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because, like, you can't just go, like, oh, take the pictures. Like, you gotta try to do the thing. You gotta try to, like, be the caveman, right? Yeah. And how many of us are capable of that? That's a good-ass movie. So that started in 1940.
That's great. So, you know, I wish that, like, when a little kid in America, like, fell down a well or something, they'd find some cave paintings. But I guess that's not how it works.
And that's it. That's all the good news from 1940.
Well, goddamn it. Okay.
Now I got a couple more things. Booker T. Washington became the first black man to be featured on a U.S. postage stamp.
All right. Good.
It's, as always, when we do the civil rights stories, it's like too little, too late, but that's good anyway.
Yeah, good for Booker T.
One of those things.
Yeah.
The Crypt of Civilization was created in 1940. Has anybody ever heard of this?
I'm not.
Of course not, because you have to get way deep in the fucking news before you get to the Crypt of Civilization. But I'm going to tell you about it anyway.
Okay.
Some folks at Oglethorpe University in the great American state of Georgia filled a room full of 1940 stuff and sealed it up and said it wasn't supposed to be open until 8113 AD.
Okay.
Do you know what? Yeah, I know. Isn't that an oddly random number?
Random, yes. Why?
They picked that number because it would be the same amount of time between then and when it was opened as it was between then and when the Egyptian pyramids were closed. They were trying to approximate the 6,000 year Egyptian pyramid thing.
All right. Is this thing still sealed
Fucking
up?
Nerds. That's deep nerd shit right there. I assume it's made it not even 100 years. I assume it's made it.
I would not assume that. I would not assume. Knowing us as a people, as Americans, I can't imagine anything staying closed for that long. I'm afraid not.
And finally, in a shout out to season 1, in December, the Chicago Bears defeated the Washington Racist Names 73-0 in what remains the most lopsided National Football League championship game in their vaunted history. And that's headlines.
All right. Well, thank you so much for those, Mike. Stephanie Crawford, you ready to do a top 5?
I'm ready.
All right, so we talked before the show, and this is not ranked. It's just sort of thematic and vibes based. So what is the first movie, Stephanie, on your top 5 for 1940?
The first one is Preston Sturges' Christmas in July.
I've just won the $25,000 first prize in the Maxford House contest. What would you do if you won $25,000? Wouldn't you tell off the boss, buy your girl a sparkler the size of a house, corner the market on cars and clothes, and bring happiness to all your friends and neighbors? It sure sounds great, doesn't it? But just suppose the whole thing was a mistake.
You know what? It's not the coffee, it's the bunk. That's what I have to say about Christmas in July.
Well, I'm no expert, but if you say it's good, all right, I'll believe you.
Preston Sturges, kind of hard to talk about Screwball without talking about him. Where does this one fall for you in sort of the Sturges pantheon?
So my top ones are more the obvious ones with Sullivan's Travels, The Lady Eve, Palm Beach Story, a few other ones, but I think this one is very solid. In fact, it improves a lot every time I watch it. And it has those great themes he likes, just ordinary people stumbling into something extraordinary, and everything kind of gets unveiled, which I like.
Yeah. This is I don't know if something about a movie from 1940 qualifies as a hot take, but here's my hot take. This is my favorite Preston Sturges movie.
Oh, wonderful.
When I first moved to New York, like a couple of years after, they did a Preston Sturges retrospective at Film Forum. Anyone who lives in New York knows that Film Forum has about 7 years of programming and they just cycle through it. So this was the first time I was here that they did their Preston Sturges one. And so I was like, I'd been hearing about him. It was kind of a blind spot for me. And I was like, I'm going to go check these movies out. This was the first one that I saw, and I was just immediately sort of enraptured by it. And I saw all of the other ones and I love them all as well. They're all great. But something about this one's simplicity and warmth and sort of kindness to this sort of schmuck really got to me. It really spoke to me in a kind of a charming way.
It's the most straight-faced leading man, leading lady screwball comedy performance that I can think of. Like, they are playing this thing so fucking real, so honest, so straight-faced. The actors, I mean, like, you know, and obviously the characters are sort of not exactly, you know, in front of the 8-ball either,
right.
But like, you know, they're not exactly right on top of the ball, but they are, you know, but it's just the actors, the way they're playing this thing is so pure, and like, it's really, it sells it makes the whole thing just work.
Yeah.
In a way that, like, you want them to win.
Yes.
Even when you know they definitely should not.
Yes. Stephanie, Sturges is one of the sort of vaunted names, I mean, of 40 cinema, to say nothing of screwball comedy. What do you think it is about his style and his approach that not only works so well, but has aged so well?
I think he was very empathetic. He was incredibly clever, incredibly funny, just fantastic at stringing along kind of absurd scenarios. So you actually just fall into it and it feels natural. But he's very empathetic. He'd show the rich as buffoons, but kind of because they couldn't help to be. They're kind of doomed to be that way, being rich folk. And he didn't demonize the poor. He never left anyone out. Pretty much everyone was welcome in his films, and that doesn't age.
Yeah.
Wow.
And of course the Sturges Stock Company, like, I guess this is one of his earliest films, but you're already seeing this really particular kind of performer that he takes to in the supporting roles. These sort of eccentric character actors who have kind of a specialty, a comedic type that he leans into, but also never makes them sort of simplistic or caricatured, I think. And that's such a tricky balance. That's not something that's easy to do.
No, I agree. And I love what Michael said about the performances, especially Dick Powell. If you want a relatable everyman, it won't bore you. You know, he's no sap, as the movie would say. But yeah, like surround him with real characters and set him off. No, I think Preston Sturges was probably very much an actor's writer and director, and that comes through. Yeah.
God, yes. Yeah, definitely. And also, anytime Franklin Pangborn shows up in a movie, I'm thrilled to my bones. And he was one of his regular guys, and I love that. And he will, I'll mention him a bit later as well. Stephanie, what is the next movie on your top 5 for 1940?
I thought I'd upset the apple cart for no reason and go with Rebecca from, of course, Alfred Hitchcock.
Announcing the return of the most glamorous motion picture ever made, David O. Selznick and Alfred Hitchcock bring you the Grand Slam prize winner that made motion picture history. Winner of the Academy Award, voted by America's critics as the best picture of the year. And now, as a result of a national poll, winning new honors as audiences throughout the country vote to see it again. The Selznick Studio's successor to Gone with the Wind, Rebecca, brought to the screen with all the warmth and emotion that made millions of readers acclaim Daphne du Maurier's bestseller as the most exciting love story of our time.
And why is that upsetting the apple cart? Do you not see this one as a screwball comedy? I don't know. There's some elements.
If you want to look at something a certain way, you can certainly put that work in. I just haven't done it yet. But if that's your point of view, I would love to hear it.
So this was the first big Hitchcock's first sort of American crossover, his first movie for a big American producer, David O. Selznick, of course, and ended up being one of his. I probably one of his most iconic, at least of the early films. For folks who haven't seen it, what is so special about Rebecca? What sticks with you about this one?
Rebecca, I actually didn't connect with that much when I first saw it, and I think it's probably because I related to the main unnamed character more than I was comfortable with. But I think later on I actually fell in love with the book Jane Eyre, and then I returned to Rebecca, and they share a lot of themes. Of course, the Gothic setting and the naive young, not stupid, but just thrown to the wolves basically, and having to fight her way through a gorgeous, spooky house to try to figure out the mystery of what's going on. And of course, it's tied to the former wife. So once I grew an appreciation for that trope, it pulled me in. But every time I see it, I just appreciate everything about it. It's a nightmare. It's very nearly a horror movie, but then, God, you just bring that cast in. It's electric. It's really something special. So I guess if there's anyone who didn't connect with it like me, give it another chance. Everyone else is smarter than me. That's probably not an issue, but I still say give it another chance.
It's not, first of all, it's not really what we think of now when we think of a Hitchcock movie.
Absolutely.
It has the sort of visual razzle dazzle. It has certain themes that would recur throughout the filmography, but it is of a different look and feel than the later sort of much more Hitchcockian sort of things. So I think that in some way, like the first time I saw it, I wasn't quite sure what to make of it, just because I was approaching it, looking for another Rear Window, looking for another Psycho, and it's definitely not that. But your point about Jane Eyre is a really good one, and I think this would make a fantastic double feature with, there's that 1944 version of Jane Eyre that Robert Stevenson directed with Orson Welles and Joan Fontaine, and Jesus, that's a really good double feature now that you put it that way.
But look, how where you can see the Hitchcock in it, because we have this conversation on this show every time one of his like pre-Rear Window movies comes up.
Sure,
it's like, where's the Hitchcock in it? Like, when did he sort of like start being the Hitchcock that we all think of, right? And you can see it in this movie because, as with, it seems like his movies, a lot of them work this way, where it starts off, you meet the people, you find the thing, you're doing it, you know what's going on, and it doesn't happen until about 70% of the way through the movie that like shit starts piling up. That like all of a sudden, like just when you really think you know where the movie's gonna go from where we're at through the end, even if you don't know the details, you feel like you have a sense of what's happening here. And then at like every like 5% mark, now all of a sudden the fucking house is burning down. Like it's just like, and this is something that he does better than maybe anybody, and that I think is a hallmark of his of his movies is once you get to that like 70-75% mark, when you think you know what's going to happen, all of a sudden the movie just does 15 fucking things you didn't know were going to happen.
Yeah.
But it all makes sense. It all plays. The characters all react to it in a way that sort of makes it fit within the story. It's one of those things that he can pull off that I think for a lot of other directors, you start to feel like they're just piling on.
Yeah.
Right. But he's actually pulling it off.
Right. Like it's the kind of narrative that could very easily get out of a lesser director's control, but he's all about control. He's always in control.
And like Rebecca does this was a first time watch for me. And I was sort of watching it like, and digging it, enjoying it.
Sure.
This is maybe this is one of the only times I've seen Olivier that he like worked for me. I don't find him particularly
I agree. I'm hard
personally,
on him.
but like but he's in a role here where he's like this, sort of like sad Trustafarian, right? And like his thing that he does like works in that sort of context, and so obviously he's not terrible. He's just sort of a context actor for me, know, right? So anyway, but I'm watching it and I'm just sort of enjoying it, and I'm constantly thinking about like, where's the Hitchcock? And by the time the house is burning down, it's like the Hitchcock is like he's tattooed his name on my forehead.
Yeah. The thing that really jumped out at me on this watch, I had seen this one before a couple of times. I don't know if Wells was in my head because I also make that Jane Eyre leap, Stephanie. But I was also thinking about the fact that, this came out in 40, Citizen Kane comes out in 41. Did Orson Welles bite the closing shot of Kane from the closing shot of this? Do you know what I'm talking about? Like the closing shot is like, the R, the monogrammed, whatever it is, like handkerchief or whatever, sort of melting down in flames. It's like,
I gotta tell you,
all I can think about is a rosebud sled when I'm looking at that shot. Like
we are overdue for a new Citizen Kane conspiracy. I will say that everything out there is pretty stale.
Thank you.
I think we could throw that into the mix.
Thank you very much. I'm not accusing the man of
Oh,
anything.
no.
I'm not
Oh,
saying
no.
he's a plagiarist. I'm just, he talked a lot about sort of binging films when he was prepping for Kane, and the famous story about him watching Stagecoach 30 times in the month before he started. I'm just saying maybe one night he put on Rebecca instead of Stagecoach. That's all I'm saying. Maybe. Just a maybe. All right, Stephanie, well, with that detour from Screwball done, what will be the third film on your top 5 for 1940?
I feel bad not mentioning George Sanders, one of my favorite actors, and boy, is he a great wrench.
Oh, God. Oh, God. He is so wormy in that movie. Holy
maybe
shit.
Mildly
Okay,
screwball-y?
yes.
I don't know. But
yeah, maybe. There you go. Go.
Next up is Angels Over Broadway.
But baby, you're worth more than 2 bits. You don't seem to think so, but I do.
I'm getting a little confused. You're not trying to make love to me by any chance.
Listen, baby, when I start making love to you, it won't be any guessing game.
Now, this was not only a first time watch for me, this was a movie I had not heard of before it appeared on your top 5 list. So kudos on that. So for those like me who maybe hadn't heard of it, what's the plot here, and what's the sort of background on this one?
Okay, so you have kind of your classic noir, hard-boiled setting. We have a desperate man. Mm-hmm. He owes a great deal of money to some dangerous people. He's looking at suicide. He's looking at enough to do a beautifully written suicide letter. Figures he'll take himself to a nightclub. He has the embezzled money. Figures he'd take himself out, and he is surrounded by sharks in this nightclub. They see him spending money pretty freely. So he gets surrounded by the likes of Douglas Fairbanks Jr., who is just a very complex slime ball in here. We have a lovely young Rita Hayworth, who's apparently Russian.
Apparently, with the cutest little Brooklyn accent I've ever heard. Yes.
You can't top it. And this is just one of those great films where the plot just takes place over one night. loyalties change, there are twists and turns, hands change. You got a high tension poker game. I don't know who doesn't love those. You get that.
Nope. Let's do
And
it.
you even get a little schmaltz, you know? You get a little bit of look into the human condition. We're all down in the dumps. There's still a little hope for us.
Yes.
Boy, this has a lot of competition within its genre. I'll admit that, but there's just something about it. And I think, again, and it's something all these films, I think, have in common, is just incredible chemistry between the cast. Everyone just clicks. They seem to get what the story wants to say. Yeah, I think Ben Hecht, who wrote and directed it, did a great job. And he's weirdly connected to some of these things. He worked on Hitchcock's script for Foreign Correspondent, which also came out in 1940. And he wrote the front page, which might come in later. But
might come up later. Ben Hecht is one of these figures that I am like, anytime he pops up in credits, which happens a lot because he was busy as shit. He was extremely prolific, famous sort of gunslinger, really. Like, he would come in and he could bang out a script in a few days. He could bang out a rewrite in a day or two. Like, he was just sort of one of these legendary screenwriters of this golden era. And anytime he pops up in the credits, I'm like, I sit up straight. I'm like, okay, well, what are you going to do here, Ben Hecht? I remember hearing a story once that must have been apocryphal, that he, like, in his house, he would have like a typewriter in multiple rooms, like multiple typewriters in multiple rooms, and the different scripts that he was in different stages on in different rooms, so that he could bounce around his house all day just to sort of like keep up on all of his assignments.
Imagine what he could do with today's technology. That's a little scary.
Oh my God. Yeah. So yeah, this is one of not a lot of films that he directed. But it's a very much a Ben Hecht screenplay, and it's I don't think it's dazzlingly directed, but it's well mounted, and he's a fine director. I think a lot of what he was really bringing to it was skill with the actors. Like, all of these performers are a lot of fun to watch in this one. It's got my boy Thomas Mitchell in it. Like, I am, as we've discussed on the show, a huge It's a Wonderful Life person. So like, Uncle Billy comes in drunk from the jump. I'm like, yes, Ben Hecht, let's go. That made me happy. It's just, it is a really charming little movie. I was really taken with it.
Oh, I'm glad. Yeah, I have a huge soft spot for films where a bunch of lost random souls end up in one place and get their miseries all jumbled up together, and they have to spend the rest of the time unjumbling it.
Beautifully put. Yeah. And Rita Hayworth, like, is such a doll in this movie. Like, and it's a fun performance because thanks to Gilda and it's sort of ubiquity via Shawshank, I think we sort of now pigeonhole her as a femme fatale, and this is very much not a femme fatale.
No.
It's a really charming performance.
No, she's actually my number one favorite classic actress. I have a little bit of a fixation with her. I know she was great in comedies as well, but yeah, you see kind of the sweetness. She's even a little goofy, as beautiful as she is, and she's surprisingly given a lot to do here, which I appreciate. I do wonder, there's that one line where she does mention she's Russian dancing. She mentions as popular Latin dancing is, and just knowing her background, I've always been curious if that was kind of a nod to her background.
Little inside joke for the Hayworth heads out there. I love that.
Hayworth head.
All right, Stephanie, then what is the fourth movie for your top 5 for 1940?
All right, let's go back to the screwball comedies with the Philadelphia Story.
What in the name of all that's holy am I to do?
Tracy.
Yes, Mike?
Old Parson Parson, he's never seen Kittredge before, has he? Now look, I got you into this thing, and I'll get you out of it. Will you marry me, Tracy?
There we go, directed by George Cukor. With I mean, is there a better love triangle in romantic comedy, screwball comedy history than Katharine Hepburn, Cary Grant, and Jimmy Stewart? Like, I don't know of one.
I have immense respect for love triangles where they don't make the third person a sap or a terrible person,
Yes.
or like why would they
Yes.
ever fall in love with him? With Jimmy Stewart, this intrepid, frustrated poet reporter, uh, you can absolutely see her falling in love with him. He's so wonderful in this, which is an easy thing to say about Jimmy Stewart, but this is definitely one of my favorite performances of his.
Yeah, mine too. Yeah, it's you can't, you both can understand why she would fall in love with him and also understand why she would not be able to get over Cary Grant, because you know what, it's Cary Grant. And I feel like, you know, with, and you can speak to this more you can speak to this better than I can as more of an expert on it, but sort of within screwball comedy there's sort of this subgenre of the marriage and divorce screwball comedy, and I feel like Cary Grant is in almost all of those. It feels like that was kind of a specialty for
There's
him.
almost a third one with that with Cary Grant that made my list. And I was like, listen, I need to pull back a bit. I'm glad he didn't, but I need to a little bit for the list. Yeah, it's very specific. It works for me. They're doing original things within that framework, which is wonderful. But oh yeah, 1940 was lousy with that.
Yeah, this idea that, you know, that there are complications that sort of inevitably ensue when you're dealing with divorce and estrangement and people who cannot get over each other, which is a nice little cornerstone for the screwball comedy. When did Philadelphia Story first come into your life? Was this an early screwball comedy favorite for you, or one that you came to late?
Yeah, this would have been earlier one, maybe 1920. Not the year 1920. I was 19 or 20, and yeah, I
got it.
I think it's one of those ones I saw, and I was like, okay, I'm looking up this director. Okay, I'm gonna see those. And I developed a crush on Cary Grant pretty quickly.
Sure,
I remember early on, TCM had him as the star of the month, and I taped everything. I think I've seen everything he's been in, from Penny Serenade on.
He's an actor of deceptive range, and by that I mean, you know, he is very much a personality. Like he carved out a persona. He built a personality on screen. And a couple of years back, I read Scott Eamon's biography of him, A Brilliant Disguise, which is very much about that construction. But it's not the same thing to say that he played every role the same, or that he kept playing the same kinds of roles. That within that persona, he found all of these sort of shadings and approaches and adjusted it for the genres he was working in, the scripts he was working with, the directors that he was working with. What is it about him that has lived on, that has made him sort of still one of the first people we think of when we think of this era?
Well, yeah, I think that's a wonderful way to kind of deconstruct it. I think maybe he was always Cary Grant, and instead of him becoming lost in a role, it's almost like Cary Grant was temporarily inhabiting someone else's persona for a little while. So there's always Cary Grant there, but he never felt like a careless actor to me. I feel like he truly tried to get into his characters, and he just couldn't help being such a distinctive person. So it's kind of, you know, a very memorable looking and talking man, but with talent on top of it. And
I mean, I think in some ways you can kind of say the same thing about Katharine Hepburn.
yeah.
You can kind of say the same thing about Jimmy Stewart. I mean, there are personalities that are in place and that are clearly locked in here, but that within those persona throughout their careers, they're working in all sorts of different keys. I love the story that Katharine Hepburn, like, bought the rights to this herself, that like she saw it on stage. She was going through, if I understand this correctly, a rough patch in her film career after that notorious the box office Poison ad, and knew that this was a movie, that this was a role that would put her back on top, and just clung to it until she could get it made with the right combination of collaborators. That's such a atypical move for an actor, particularly a female actor of that era, but you see why she did it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Tracy Lord is that she's a complex character, and she's a different person with so many people, and there are infuriating things about her, like I guess to be kind, her softness towards her father, where she basically apologizes for judging him for being unfaithful to their mom because he wanted to feel young. That part,
Right.
I don't think age well, but yeah, just she's able to trick people. I love the relationship with her little sister. She's mischievous. She can be regal. One of the screen's great drunks, in my personal opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah, she made the right
and
move
that's
with this one.
Yeah. Playing drunk is harder than it sounds. It's so easy to do it as a caricature, and she does not do that. She knows that the way to play a drunk is to play someone who's trying not to appear drunk, and that tension is what makes it funny.
Do you have an opinion about High Society? Because I always go back and forth on how I feel about that one.
I have a confession, which is that I've not seen High Society. I keep meaning to, but I haven't made my way to it yet. And I'm a little skeptical of it. Like, I don't know how even that cast, and even with a musical, how it could be any better than the Philadelphia Story. Where do you land on it?
Like I said, I kind of go back and forth on it. It's not a true blue golden musical. But just the fact that it's a musical remake and it stars Grace Kelly. There's some films I just get angry at myself for not being a bigger fan of. I take that I don't blame the movie. I blame myself. And High Society is one of them. But it does have a great main theme tune, except I always get mixed up with Mel Brooks's High Anxiety. And so I kind of So
High Society, you win. All right. Let's wrap it up. Stephanie, what is the fifth and final movie in your 1940 top five?
Let's wrap it up with the GOAT, His Girl Friday.
From the Columbia Studios in Hollywood comes an exciting new film triumph. A companion hit to Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, His Girl Friday. Co-starring a thrilling new pair of screen lovers, Devil May Care, Cary Grant, and ravishing Rosalind Russell. Let's listen in to one of their tender, idyllic love scenes.
I am fond of you, you know.
Yeah, that girl.
I often wish you weren't such a stinker.
Hell yes. I had somehow never put it together that Cary Grant did both of these in the same year. Like I looked up the release dates, and like these were bookends. This came out in January, and Philadelphia Story came out in December. Like, what a way to start and end your year by making two of the greatest screwball comedies ever.
Yeah, I went to the Ben Hecht School of Overaccomplishment.
There you go. And yeah, like you mentioned, this is based on a Ben Hecht stage play, The Front Page, previously made into a movie by, I want to say, Louis Millstone. And then the story, which may be oversimplified, was that Howard Hawks was going to do a remake. He was doing readings. He had the script girl, which is what they were called then, reading the Hildy Johnson role, and liked the way that it sounded with a female actor, and just sort of decided on the spot to gender swap it. I don't know if it actually happened that simply, but what a great story if it did.
Yeah, from what I've read about it over the years, I feel like everyone's like, well, we don't have concrete proof of that, but it's a really nice story, so let's just go with it until we get evidence.
Let's go with it. As one of Hawks's contemporaries said in one of his better pictures, print the legend. So what is it about His Girl Friday that is, I think this is a perfect movie. And I have theories, but I would like to hear yours. What is it about His Girl Friday that is so good that makes it kind of the gold standard for the screwball comedy?
Oh, I have to narrow it down. Great. Okay. Well, I'll start out with the personal, which is when I was young, I thought I'd be a journalist. I was on track, taking journalism courses, everything. I was obsessed with seeing anything involved with it whatsoever, even if it is a screwball comedy. And just seeing Hildy just she lands like a breeze and a bomb at the same time, and I don't know how Rosalind Russell does that, but good Lord, she does it.
Yeah.
And the whole time, everyone's telling her she's a fantastic writer. She can't leave this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a kooky world, but this is in your blood and you have the talent. And that actually, when I was young, that actually meant a lot to me. That, especially in a film of this age, that everyone made such a big deal about her writing talent. But more broadly, it's almost inconceivable for me to process how perfect this came out, because it is like a tightrope with the dialogue, and the plot depends on us really caring about a large amount of characters and what happens to them, and and there's a lot of whiplash. There's Gallows being tested out in a desperate man, and then there's then he's being hidden in a roll top desk while someone's mom is being thrown over her shoulder. And, it shouldn't work. And it works better than any movie. And it also has Ralph Bellamy, the greatest second banana of all time. Good Lord, I love him. Half of me wanted him to be a leading man, but half of me is like, no one could be the third guy. And again, he's a wonderful guy.
Yeah, it's not. He's not some sneering villain. The problem is, frankly, that he's not devious enough to win this battle for her affections. That he's too nice of a guy.
Yeah, she's in such a specified high stress world. It's just like kind of bringing a lamb to slaughter, not willingly. You didn't know you were doing that. You thought you were going on a field trip, and oh no, we're at the slaughterhouse. I'm sorry.
Yeah. And then of course, Cary Grant at his most charming rogue. Like he's so devious, he's so deceptive, but he's so charming and so funny in this movie. It's sort of the ne plus ultra Cary Grant leading man turn, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and again, so many things he does in this movie would make me absolutely hate that character. Instead, and here I'm just like, oh, you
of
course
devil.
You do that.
Oh God. Okay, well then let me turn it back then, as you did with High Society. This is the second of 4 film versions of the front page. Have you seen the others, and do you have thoughts on them? There is the 1931 front page. There is the, I want to say 75, 74 Billy Wilder front page with Walter Matthau and Jack Lemmon. And then the 1988 sort of revamp, Switching Channels with Burt Reynolds and Kathleen Turner. Have you seen any of those? Do you have thoughts on it?
Yeah, I've seen all of them. Once I found out the source material, I of course had to see them all. And I will say,
of course,
I can see why that story has become a protected legend, making Hildy a man. Or I'm sorry, making Hildy a woman. Because that, the front page, of course, it's an incredibly solid story. That's why people keep remaking it. But even the Lemmon and Matthau one, I never connected with it as much. I will say I love Switching Channels. That's just, it's a lot of fun. Christopher Reeve with those highlights.
Yes.
I thought that was a really fun to put into broadcasting. I thought that was well, again, they bring in Kathleen Turner, so maybe I just need that strong female in there.
Yep.
Yeah, so no, it's more I respect the older ones rather than enjoy them. But His Girl Friday just stands alone for me.
It's untouchable. It's a legitimately perfect motion picture. All right, Stephanie, thank you for that premium top 5. Now let's find out about the big doings of the rest of the entertainment business in the year 1940. Here is Mike with the Hollywood Minute.
Hollywood freaks on the Hollywood scene.
The Academy agreed with Stephanie about Rebecca, which picked up the Oscar for Best Picture, though the Golden Boy for Best Director didn't go to Hitch. It went to John Ford for The Grapes of Wrath.
Stephanie, where do you land on The Grapes of Wrath?
Fantastic. Rips my heart out. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's one of those ones I'm like, I need to see that again. But I think I'm going to rewatch His Girl Friday first.
There you There you go. It is an easier sit, yes, considerably.
Rath also picked up the Oscar for Best Supporting Actress for Jane Darwell. Best Actor went to Jimmy Stewart for The Philadelphia Story. Bravo to the Academy for giving some love to a comedy.
Mm-hmm.
Best Actress to Ginger Rogers for Kitty Foyle, and Best Supporting Actor to Walter Brennan for The Westerner.
Stephanie, this was the first I had heard of The Westerner. Have you seen that one or Kitty Foyle? Thoughts on either of those?
No, I've heard of Kitty Foyle because I really like Ginger Rogers, but I haven't seen either one.
The year's biggest box office hit was the Jack Conway-directed Western Boomtown, starring Clark Gable, Spencer Tracy, Claudette Colbert, and Hedy, not Hedley, Lamar.
Mm-hmm.
Chaplin's The Great Dictator came in second at the box office with Rebecca in third, followed by Cecil B. DeMille's Northwest Mounted Police, while Busby Berkeley's Strike Up the Band rounded out the top 5.
All right, Stephanie, so that's Boomtown, Great Dictator, Northwest Mounted Police, Strike Up the Band. Anything you like in that bunch?
Yeah.
Such as?
I think they should all be proud of their good work. Yeah, no, sorry, no strong feelings.
Okay.
And we had 3 noteworthy debuts in 1940. In February, Tom and Jerry make their debut in the animated cartoon Puss Gets the Boot. In November, Woody Woodpecker made his debut in the cartoon short Knock Knock. And best of all, in July, the animated short A Wild Hare introduced the one and only Bugs Bunny.
Hell yes. Yay.
Some other births of note in 1940, directors and friends of the show Walter Hill, Brian De Palma, Dario Argento, and George A. Romero. Beatles and actors John Lennon and Ringo Starr. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It may be slightly unprofessional to call bullshit on my own show, but we're referring to the Beatles as actors now?
Yes, we are. Let's see. They all appeared in all of the Beatles movies. John Lennon appeared in Richard Lester's How I Won the War, a fine supporting performance in that satirical drama. Ringo Starr was in a shitload of movies. He was in The Magic Christian with Peter Sellers. He was in Caveman with his future wife, Barbara Bach. He had a whole second career as an he directed. He was also a filmmaker, Mike. He directed the T-Rex documentary Born to Boogie. So no, I think I stand by my attribution to John Lennon and Ringo Starr as Beatles and actors. Thank you very much.
I guess you just have to be, it's like Hunter Thompson. If you can sell it, that makes it art, right?
I guess
doesn't have to be good. Mm-hmm. Okay. Actors, Peter Fonda. Now there's a fucking actor.
Yeah.
John Hurt, James Cromwell, Raul Julia, Julie Christie, Michael Parks, Lance Henriksen, John Mahoney, James Brolin, Dan Hedaya, Martin Sheen, Raquel Welch, Sam Watterson, and 3 full-on legends, Bruce Lee, Richard Pryor, and Al fucking Pacino. Hoo-ah, and that's your Hollywood Minute.
All right, thank you, Mike. Okay, Stephanie Crawford, you ready to do a lightning round?
Let's go.
All right, you know how it works. I'm going to feed you a list of titles pulled from the Film Daily Yearbook of Motion Pictures for 1940. You can comment briefly on each or pass if you wish. And here we go. Walt Disney's Fantasia.
Ooh, beautiful and confusing as a young kid.
Big year for the Disney studios. They also put out Pinocchio in 1940.
Strangely gets better with every viewing the older I get.
We had 2 pictures from the great Michael Powell in 1940, The Thief of Baghdad and Contraband.
Unfortunately, I need to get to both of those.
We had more Cary Grant in 1940. We had My Favorite Wife and The Howards of Virginia.
My Favorite Wife almost made the list, and Howards of Virginia, I need to get to.
My Favorite Wife being the yet another marriage and divorce screwball comedy. Love it so much. Another one you actually mentioned earlier, another Hitchcock movie from 1940, Foreign Correspondent.
Yeah, solid, thrilling. Not the most memorable Hitchcock, but yeah, a good time.
Yeah. There's a great shot in that of umbrellas from overhead that Brian De Palma bit for the Bonfire of the Vanities, and that's the main thing I remember about Foreign Correspondent. We had another Sturges in 1940 as well, The Great McGinty.
Oh yeah, I definitely need to see it again, but it's Sturges, come on.
Solid Sturges. And of course we had more Jimmy Stewart in 1940, a little bit of magic called The Shop Around the Corner.
Ooh, I want to like it more than I actually do.
Bing. Oh my God. I never thought I'd find another person who felt the same way. The one and only Dorothy Arzner directed a picture in 1940 called Dance Girl Dance.
Lucille Ball. Yeah, just a effervescent, fun, clever. Love it.
Raoul Walsh directed a little bit of magic called They Drive by Night.
Oh, ooh, yes. Thank you. You can put that on. Can you put that on right now? I'll take care of it. Sorry.
We had some good horror pictures in 1940. Stephanie, have you seen The Mummy's Hand?
Yeah, not the Mummy series, not my favorite to begin with. That one was very watered down soup.
Kind of running on fumes by that point,
yes.
That franchise. The Invisible Man Returns was released in 1940.
No one can match Claude Rains, but solid entry.
And also The Invisible Woman in 1940.
Oh yeah, that one's almost a screwball comedy. I would say that is a screwball comedy, fashion show and everything.
The Broadway Melody of 1940.
Yeah, solid musical, not the most memorable to me, but yeah, Fred Astaire, can't really complain about that.
Cannot. We had two Laurel and Hardy pictures in 1940, A Chump at Oxford and Saps at Sea.
They are a gigantic blind spot for me. Is that a good place to jump off?
I would start with Way Out West, but these are both pretty good ones as well.
All right.
Bob Hope was in The Ghost Breakers in 1940.
I love the movies he made with Paulette Goddard. Those are gold to me. Love it.
Mm-hmm. Very much so. And also reteamed with his occasional, or you know what? This may have been the first one, actually. I don't know about reteamed. Hope and Crosby did Road to Singapore in 1940.
The road movies, they merged together a little bit for me, but in a pleasant way.
Mm-hmm. Very much so. And the Marx Brothers released Go West in 1940.
Yeah, I love the Marx Brothers. That's a decent one. Yeah.
It's middle of the road. I agree. Abbott and Costello made their film debut in 1940's One Night in the Tropics.
I'm ashamed to say I've only seen the ones with them and the monsters.
That's not. There's nothing to be ashamed of about that. A little pre-teaming before Double Indemnity, we had Stanwyck and Fred McMurray in Remember the Night.
Oh yeah, that one's kind of mean. Yeah, that's a nice one.
Mm-hmm. And finally, big release in 1940, The Fighting 69th. Nice.
Yeah, I didn't get to that one.
We try not to end on a pass. Carol Reed directed two movies in 1940, Night Train to Munich and The Stars Look Down.
Okay, I did see Night Train to Munich. Yes, that one was enjoyable. That's all I have.
And there we go. That's fine. That concludes our lightning round. Stephanie, you did great. Thank you so much for that. Where can people follow you on social media?
They can't. They need to mind their own business. No, I'm sorry.
Hey. That is a good answer that I'm going to start using.
I'm Scrawfish on Twitter and Blue Sky. And I also have my website linked there where you can see writing I've done as well as podcasts.
Beautiful. I am Fun City Cinema on Instagram, Jason-Bailey on Blue Sky and Letterboxd, where you can find under my lists the top 5s for every episode of the show. Mike, where can people find you?
I am Brainwash Lib on Twitter and Fifth Column Films on Instagram and Blue Sky.
And of course, if you like the show and think other people might like it too, please, we implore you to leave us a rating and or review on your podcatcher of choice. If you'd like to join our mailing list and get weekly show notes and such, you can do that at buttondown.email/averygoodyear. And last but not least, if you'd like to make a donation to support us and the show, you can do that at ko-fi.com/funcitysounds. Mike, before we go, what is your favorite movie of 1940?
Look, I'm not going to say it's the best movie that came out this year. We've had a nice run, but I really like 1 Million BC. Have you ever seen 1 Million BC?
Not this version. I've seen the Raquel Welch fur bikini version.
I just saw that a couple weeks ago. That's a lot of fun.
Whoa.
Man, I love a caveman movie, first of all. I love a caveman movie from any era. Doesn't matter to me. It's barely less speculative than fucking future movies.
Right.
You know, it's like there's some idea of what the clothes are made out of, but otherwise we're making all this shit up. But like, The best thing about 1 Million BC is not necessarily the fact of the movie itself, but the way that the footage from the movie ends up permeating into 1,000 other movies. Like, they did all this shit where they take elephants and they put shag carpet on them so they look like woolly mammoths. There's like all these lizards that have dinosaur spines that have been glued to their backs and they're shot in miniature and all this kind of wild stuff. There's all this, like, there's a lot of fighting. It's like actually a very high... There's a lot of high intensity action for a movie from 1940 that's not a swashbuckler. So like you get to see sort of the bleeding edge of like fight choreography and wrestling with like animals they shouldn't really be. There's no way this would be allowed now. It's just all kinds of fucking, it's such a fascinating thing to watch. And another thing about it, then I just have to prepare people for things like this. Like I could not show this movie to my wife. You know how like sometimes you'll see like a sign somewhere that says like you're not allowed to like stand here on one foot with your shirt off, you know, preaching the gospel of White Castle or whatever, and you're like, that had to have really happened because nobody would have thought up that rule without that really happening, right? After this movie, the ASPCA got all kinds of really specific weird rules passed because they did all this fucked up shit to animals in this movie. Like the animal rights people, it hadn't occurred to them that anybody would ever even do this. So why would there be a rule about it until 1 million BC hit the ground? And like also like we know now, and they knew then, that people and dinosaurs didn't live at the same time.
Well, that's true.
Like woolly mammoths, yes, you know, but dinosaurs, no, and they knew that. And also, 1 million isn't even far enough back. If that's anyway, ignore all of that shit. Just dig the movie and also listen to it. Watch it the way that you listen to like a James Brown movie. A record from the late 60s where you hear all of the little beats that ended up getting pulled out for rap music later, right? Like you will see 100 shots in this movie that you're like, wait, wasn't that in a Gamera movie later? Yes, it probably was. How about you, buddy?
Under normal circumstances, I might say My Little Chickadee, which is, the team up of the immortal talents of W.C. Fields and Mae West. And any other year, I might say that were it not for the fact that the same year, W.C. Fields, the GOAT, put out The Bank Dick, his best movie, his funniest movie, his masterpiece as far as I'm concerned, which is fast and funny and weird and great. He wrote it. He stars in it. It's about, a bank detective, like a guy who kind of shits his pants when a bank robbery is attempted, but it comes out of it looking like he foiled it. So they make him the head of security at the bank and make him into a town hero. But he's really W.C. Fields, so he's a drunken piece of shit. And also there's all this other stuff at the beginning of the movie where they're making a movie in the town and he like bluffs his way into being the director of the thing. So there's Hollywood satire stuff in here as well. It's got Franklin Pangborn in it, who I mentioned earlier. It's got Grady Sutton, who's one of my favorite members of the W.C. Fields stock company. And there's all of this great henpecked husband stuff in it because his wife hates him and his mother-in-law lives with him and hates him. It's just sort of the perfect W.C. Fields movie. It's everything that he does well, he does at his best in The Bank Dick. So that's my pick for 1940. Thank you again, Stephanie, for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you so much. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Jason.
And thank you for listening.
It was